You wake up on February 14th, check your phone, and there it is. Red hearts, flower deliveries, couples posting long captions that read like acceptance speeches at the Oscars. To my forever Valentine, every day with you is magic. Meanwhile, you're sitting there thinking, is it just me or is this a little much? Maybe you're in a relationship and you didn't plan anything extravagant. Maybe you're single and you genuinely don't feel devastated about it. Maybe you forgot it was Valentine's Day until 3 p.m. and had to pretend you were keeping it low-key on purpose. And then that tiny voice creeps in. Should I care more? Am I missing something?
Here's the strange part. We're told that if you're truly in love, you should make a big deal out of Valentine's Day. Big gestures equal big feelings. Expensive dinners equal emotional depth. Social media posts equal relationship success. But psychologically, that equation doesn't actually hold up. In fact, people who don't make a big deal out of Valentine's Day often reveal something surprisingly interesting about how they experience love. Let me paint you a scene. Imagine two couples. One books the fancy restaurant, buys roses, exchanges carefully wrapped gifts. The other orders takeout, watches a show, maybe jokes about how overpriced flowers are in February. From the outside, who looks more romantic? Obviously the first couple. But here's the question that makes this interesting. Which couple feels more secure? Psychologists have long studied what's called attachment style. Researchers like John Bowlby and later Mary Ainsworth showed that the way we bond in childhood shapes how we connect as adults. People with anxious attachment tend to seek reassurance through visible signs of love. They might feel especially sensitive around culturally loaded days like Valentine's Day. A missed gift can feel like a missed heartbeat. But securely attached people, they often don't panic about symbolic holidays. They don't rely on one day to measure their partner's affection. For them, love is less about spectacle and more about consistency. It's the Tuesday night check-in, the random drive safe text, the quiet loyalty that doesn't need an audience. And here's the twist. Sometimes not making a big deal out of Valentine's Day isn't apathy, it's security. Think about it. If your relationship feels solid, you don't need external validation to prove it's real. You don't need the ritual to confirm the bond. It's like having money in the bank. You don't check your account every 5 minutes when you trust it's stable. But if you're unsure, suddenly every transaction matters. Now, that doesn't mean people who love Valentine's Day are insecure. Not at all. Some people simply enjoy rituals. Humans are ritual-driven creatures. Anthropologists have shown that celebrations strengthen group identity and emotional bonding. Holidays create shared meaning. They give us pause in a chaotic world. There's something beautiful about that.
But here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. When someone shrugs at Valentine's Day and says, I don't need one specific day to show love, they might be expressing something deeper. They might be valuing intrinsic over extrinsic validation. Extrinsic validation is public, visible, performative. It's the Instagram post, the bouquet, the dinner reservation. Intrinsic validation is private. It's the unposted moment, the inside joke, the quiet feeling of safety next to someone. Which one feels more powerful to you? There's also a cultural layer here that we don't talk about enough. Valentine's Day as we know it is heavily commercialized. Companies profit from convincing us that love must be packaged, and when love becomes packaged, it becomes comparable. Suddenly, you're not just celebrating your relationship, you're subconsciously comparing it. Why did her partner book that place? Why didn't mine? Why did they get a handwritten letter? Why did I get a text?
Social comparison theory, introduced by psychologist Leon Festinger, explains this beautifully. We evaluate ourselves by comparing to others, especially in ambiguous situations. And what's more ambiguous than love? There's no scoreboard, so we look sideways. But the person who doesn't make a big deal out of Valentine's Day might be less driven by comparison. They might not need the holiday as a metric. Their love isn't a performance, it's a process. Of course, there's another angle. Some people avoid Valentine's Day because it highlights something painful. Maybe they've experienced rejection. Maybe past relationships collapsed around expectations. For them, minimizing the day can be a protective strategy. If I don't care, I can't be disappointed. And that's not weakness. That's your brain doing what it does best, protecting you. Avoidance can sometimes signal emotional self-preservation. If a holiday amplifies feelings of loneliness, your mind may downplay its importance to reduce emotional impact. It's similar to how we might say, I didn't even want that job after not getting hired. We downregulate desire to shield ourselves from hurt. But here's the beautiful thing. Even that response reveals something deeply human, the longing to matter to someone. Let's zoom out for a second. What is Valentine's Day really about? On the surface, it's romance, but psychologically, it taps into something more primal, belonging. Humans are wired for connection. Neuroscientists have shown that social rejection activates similar brain regions as physical pain. Being chosen matters. So when someone doesn't make a big deal out of the holiday, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't value belonging. It might mean they define belonging differently. Instead of a grand declaration, they prefer steady presence. Instead of fireworks, they prefer a fireplace. And if you're someone who feels slightly out of place every February because you're not swept up in the hype, I want you to consider this. Maybe you're just not externally cued. Maybe your emotional thermostat isn't controlled by the calendar. Think about people you admire who've had long-lasting relationships. Odds are their bond wasn't built on annual spectacles. It was built on thousands of small, unremarkable moments. Shared jokes that no one else understands. Shared stress. Shared boredom. Shared life. There's research on what's called capitalization in relationships, the act of sharing positive events and having your partner respond enthusiastically. What matters isn't the scale of the event, but the responsiveness. It's not the Valentine's dinner that predicts relationship satisfaction, it's whether your partner turns toward you when you talk. The late relationship researcher John Gottman found that small bids for connection, like a casual comment or a sigh, are pivotal. Couples who consistently respond to these bids build trust, and those bids don't spike once a year, they happen daily. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't feel compelled to make February 14th cinematic, that doesn't make you cold. It might mean you're playing the long game. At the same time, here's a gentle challenge. Ask yourself, am I minimizing this day because I genuinely don't need it, or because I'm afraid of being vulnerable? There is a difference between security and emotional avoidance. Security says, I know what we have. Avoidance says, I'd rather not risk feeling exposed. And you deserve honesty with yourself.
If you're single and unbothered by Valentine's Day, that can also signal something healthy. It may mean you've decoupled your self-worth from relationship status. That's not easy in a culture that constantly pairs happiness with partnership, but independence can be deeply grounded. It can also mean you've redefined love. Love isn't just romantic. It's friendships, family, community, self-respect. Some people quietly celebrate those bonds instead. No hashtags required. But let's be real. Even the most secure person might feel a tiny twinge when scrolling through heart-shaped everything. That doesn't invalidate your independence. It just makes you human. We're social creatures in a social world. Exposure shapes emotion. So maybe the real difference isn't between people who celebrate big and those who don't. Maybe it's between people who let the day define their love and those who define love on their own terms. There's something quietly powerful about not being swept up by collective pressure. It shows internal alignment. It shows you're not outsourcing your emotional compass to culture.
And here's a perspective shift that might surprise you. People who don't make a big deal out of Valentine's Day often value depth over display. They might not shout their love from rooftops, but they show up. And showing up consistently is psychologically more predictive of lasting intimacy than dramatic gestures. Imagine love as a garden. Some people plant fireworks, bright, loud, fleeting. Others water the soil daily. The second approach isn't flashy, but it's sustainable. So the next time February 14th rolls around and you feel slightly detached from the spectacle, Don't rush to label yourself as unromantic or emotionally distant. Ask instead, what does love mean to me? How do I express it when no one's watching? Maybe you express it through loyalty, through acts of service, through calm stability, through humor, through simply staying. And if you are someone who loves going all out, who thrives on roses and handwritten letters, that's beautiful too. The point isn't to rank one approach above the other. It's to understand the psychology behind them so you can act consciously, not reactively. Because at the end of the day, love isn't measured in heart-shaped boxes. It's measured in emotional safety, in the ability to be fully yourself without fearing abandonment, in knowing that you're chosen, not just on a holiday, but on ordinary Wednesdays. So whether you're planning a candlelit dinner, ordering pizza, or completely forgetting the date until someone reminds you, pause for a moment. Notice what your reaction says about your needs, your attachment patterns, your values. There's no single correct way to relate to Valentine's Day, but there is value in understanding yourself. And maybe that's the real gift here. Not the flowers, not the posts, but the awareness. If this made you reflect on your own patterns, or someone you know who shrugs every February, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy exploring the psychology behind everyday behaviors like this, consider sticking around, because sometimes the smallest cultural moments reveal the deepest truths about who we are.